I used to believe trust was built from grand gestures. Turns out, it's built and destroyed inside ordinary days. My life had become predictable in the best way. Same alarm, same commute, same quiet pride in knowing exactly how my wife took her coffee and which shows she pretended not to like, but always watched anyway. Stability was our currency, and for years, it paid well. My name is Calvin Moore, and for a long time, I thought consistency meant safety. Then the rhythm changed. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just off, like a song playing half a beat late. Brooke Moore, my wife, didn't stop coming home. She didn't stop talking to me. She didn't even stop smiling. But the smiles became lighter, quicker, like placeholders. Our conversations shortened. Our silences stretched. At night, she'd lie beside me scrolling, thumb moving fast, eyes focused somewhere far beyond our bedroom walls. If I spoke, she'd answer, but a second late, as if she'd been pulled back from another room. I didn't accuse her. I didn't want to be that man. Instead, I watched. Patterns don't lie. People do. Brooke started caring more about how she looked for errands that used to mean sweatpants and hair tied back. She'd shower before quick meetups. Her phone never left her side, not even when she stepped into the shower. Once, I picked it up absent-mindedly to move it off the counter. She turned around so fast it startled me. "Don't," she said. "Too sharp. Too fast." She apologized immediately, blaming stress, blaming work, blaming everything except the truth. The name Julian Cross entered our lives quietly. She mentioned him like an afterthought, someone from her past who'd reconnected. Nothing dramatic, just a friendly presence. She spoke his name casually, but I noticed something she didn't realize she was doing. Her voice softened when she said it. I asked about him once while we were eating dinner. She laughed, waved it off, and told me I was reading into nothing. She even teased me for being suspicious, leaned across the table, and kissed my cheek like that should erase the knot forming in my chest. I want to believe her, desperately, but belief doesn't survive evidence. Late one night, after Brooke fell asleep with her phone clutched loosely in her hand, it lit up. Just once. No sound, just a glow. I didn't read it. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The message preview was enough. Not explicit, not incriminating, just intimate, familiar. The kind of tone you earn, not borrow. That was the moment I understood something painful and liberating at the same time. She wasn't careless. She was confident. Confident I wouldn't push. Confident I wouldn't dig. Confident that if I felt something was wrong, she could smile it away. What Brooke didn't know was that confidence creates blind spots. And while she was carefully managing one version of the truth, another version was being documented somewhere else. Quietly, patiently, by someone who had already lost more than I had. Her name was Evelyn Cross, and she was married to Julian. Evelyn Cross didn't reach out the way people expect in stories like this. There was no dramatic message, no accusation, no confession, just an email. The subject line read, "You don't know me, but I think we share the same problem." I stared at the screen for a full minute before opening it. My pulse was steady, almost calm, like my body already knew what my mind was about to confirm. Evelyn wrote carefully, like someone who'd rewritten the same words a dozen times before hitting send. She said she wasn't looking to start trouble. She wasn't asking for favors. She only wanted clarity, and maybe, if I was willing, honesty between two people who'd been kept in the dark for too long. She mentioned names, dates, patterns, everything I noticed, and more. She described Julian's sudden late meetings, his obsession with privacy, the way he'd grown distant without growing cold, still present, still attentive, just emotionally elsewhere. She wrote about the lies that were small enough to survive questions, but consistent enough to form a second life. By the time I finished reading, my hands were shaking, not with anger, with recognition. We met 3 days later at a quiet cafe on the edge of town, neutral ground, far from the places our spouses felt comfortable lying in. Evelyn arrived early. She looked composed, but her eyes told a different story. Tired, alert, like someone who'd been sleeping lightly for months. We didn't start with accusations. We started with routines. That's how you uncover betrayal. Not through explosions, but through habits. She pulled out her phone and showed me timestamps. Messages sent during work calls. Missed calls that lined up with Brooke's sudden errands. Calendar gaps that mirrored each other too perfectly to be coincidence. I showed her what little I had, patterns, behavior, the shifts that couldn't be explained away anymore. Together, the picture sharpened. They hadn't rushed into anything reckless. They were methodical, careful. They met in daylight, not darkness. Coffee shops, shared errands, professional check-ins. The kind of relationship that pretends to be innocent until it forgets how to be. Evelyn didn't cry. Not once. She spoke with a quiet steadiness that unsettled me more than tears would have. They didn't just cross a line, she said softly. They built a whole path around it, so they wouldn't have to admit where it led. We didn't make a plan that day. We made an agreement. No confrontations. No warnings. No emotional reactions they could twist into excuses. We would observe. Document. Let the truth expose itself fully before anyone tried to bury it. Over the next 2 weeks, my life split into 2 versions. There was the version Brooke saw. The calm husband, attentive, trusting, unchanged. I kissed her goodbye. I listened when she talked. I smiled when she joked about how overthinking ruins relationships. And then there was the version of me that paid attention. I noticed how she dressed more carefully on days Julian was busy. How her mood lifted after calls she claimed were stressful. How she'd pick fights over nothing, then leave the house with forced frustration, like anger gave her permission to escape. Every time she lied, she thought she was protecting herself. She was really teaching me restraint. Evelyn and I exchanged notes, never assumptions. Screenshots, receipts, locations. It wasn't obsession, it was confirmation. We weren't hunting. We were validating what had already happened. What surprised me most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how calm I became. Anger burns fast. Clarity settles deep. One evening, Brooke mentioned a casual meetup. Nothing important, she said, just catching up with an old friend before a busy week. She smiled that familiar smile again, the one meant to quiet doubt. I smiled back, because for the first time, I knew exactly where she was going. And so did Evelyn. We didn't follow them. That wasn't necessary. We already had more than enough. What we needed now wasn't proof, it was timing. Revenge isn't about shouting the truth. It's about letting the truth arrive where it hurts most. Brooke and Julian believed they were in control, that their careful choices made them untouchable, that the people they were lying were too kind, too trusting, too slow to connect the dots. They were wrong, because while they were rehearsing excuses, Evelyn and I were rewriting our futures. And soon, very soon, they were going to realize something far worse than being caught. They were going to realize they'd underestimated the quiet ones. The most dangerous lies are the ones people get comfortable telling. Once Brooke and Julian stopped worrying about being discovered, they grew careless. Not reckless, but relaxed. And relaxed people leave traces. They repeat routines. They reuse explanations. They stop checking over their shoulders. That's when Evelyn and I moved from observation to orchestration. We didn't coordinate out of anger. We coordinated out of precision. Evelyn noticed Julian had a habit of anchoring his stories around work deadlines. If he said he'd be busy on a Thursday, he'd mention a project, a client name, some detail that made the lie sound responsible. Brooke did the same thing, always tying her absences to something practical. Networking, errands, catch-ups that sounded harmless enough to question, but boring enough not to. So we leaned into that. Evelyn began asking Julian questions, not confrontational ones. Curious ones, about his schedule, about his plans, about things he thought were safe to answer because he believed no one was cross-checking. At the same time, I mirrored the behavior at home. I asked Brooke about her days, her stress, her goals. I listened closely, never interrupting, never reacting. She mistook my calm for indifference. It was neither. One evening, Brooke casually mentioned she'd been invited to a small gathering downtown the following Friday. Nothing fancy, just people she hadn't seen in a while. She framed it as spontaneous, like it had just come together. Julian, according to Evelyn, mentioned the same Friday, same location, same time frame, using different words. That was our opening. Evelyn and I didn't show up to spy. We showed up to be seen. The place was a rooftop lounge, bright, public, comfortable. The kind of environment where secrets feel safe because no one expects confrontation in plain sight. Evelyn arrived first, seated herself near the entrance, posture calm, expression unreadable. I arrived minutes later and sat across from her like it was planned. like it was natural, because by then it was. Brooke and Julian didn't notice us at first. They were too focused on each other, too relaxed inside the illusion they'd built. When they finally looked up, the shift was instant. Julian froze. Brooke's face didn't drain of color. It hardened. Not fear. Calculation. She recovered quickly, stood, smoothed her clothes, walked over like this was a coincidence she could manage. "Calvin," she said, voice light. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer her. Evelyn spoke instead. "Hi, Julian," she said calmly. "We need to talk." That was when everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, publicly, irrevocably. Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She slid her phone across the table, screenshots arranged, timestamps clear, messages layered carefully so context couldn't be denied. Julian didn't touch the phone. Brooke glanced at it once, then looked at me. "This isn't what it looks like," she said quickly. That line, the universal refuge of people caught mid-lie. I finally spoke. My voice didn't shake. "That's the problem," I said. "It looks exactly like what is." Brooke tried to pivot. She accused Evelyn of misunderstanding. She accused me of paranoia. She accused everyone except herself. Julian stayed silent, which told me more than any confession could. Evelyn stood. "We're done pretending," she said. "You don't need to explain yourselves. We already know who you chose to be." She turned to me, not asking, inviting. I stood too. We didn't stay. We didn't argue. We didn't listen to excuses sharpen into attacks. We left them sitting there, exposed not by volume, but by clarity. The fallout didn't come immediately. It came later. At home, Brooke didn't apologize. She didn't confess. She attacked. She said I humiliated her. She said Evelyn manipulated me. She said trust should have mattered more than screenshots. When she realized guilt wasn't working, she tried anger. When anger failed, she tried distance. She packed a bag and left that night, telling me she needed space to think. Julian did the same, retreated, unreachable, hiding behind silence. They thought distance was protection. They didn't realize it was confirmation. Evelyn and I didn't celebrate. There was no satisfaction yet, only resolve. We had exposed the lie, but exposure isn't justice. It's just the beginning. Because the truth doesn't end relationships. It reveals character. And now that Brooke and Julian had shown us exactly who they were, Evelyn and I were ready for the part they hadn't anticipated. The part where consequences arrive calmly, legally, and without mercy. Silence is louder after truth has been spoken. The days following the rooftop encounter felt unreal, like living inside the echo of something already finished. Brooke didn't call. She didn't text. When she finally reached out, it wasn't to explain, it was to negotiate. She wanted to talk calmly. She wanted to clear misunderstandings. She wanted control back. By then, I had moved past the need for answers. I had clarity, and clarity changes the shape of pain. It sharpens it, then steadies it. Evelyn and I stayed in contact, not out of comfort, but coordination. We weren't plotting revenge fueled by rage. We were choosing accountability fueled by truth. There's a difference. One burns itself out. The other lasts. The evidence we gathered wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. It showed patterns of deception, shared time hidden behind excuses, and emotional commitments that didn't belong inside marriage. Enough to strip away deniability. Enough to make intentions undeniable. Brooke came home one afternoon without warning. She stood in the doorway like she still belonged there, arms crossed, face composed. "You blindsided me," she said. I looked at her calmly. "No, you just didn't think I'd ever stop believing you." That ended the conversation. I had already spoken to a lawyer. Not in secret. Not with malice. With resolve. Brooke learned that the life she thought was stable had been balanced on a lie she built herself. The process wasn't cruel. It was fair. And fairness felt like justice. Julian tried to reach out too. Not to apologize. To explain. Evelyn didn't give him the space. She filed first. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She chose herself. That's the part they never expect. Weeks later, everything settled into place. The shared accounts were divided. The stories stopped working. The excuses lost their audience. Brooke moved on quickly, publicly, loudly, trying to prove she hadn't lost anything. But people noticed patterns. Friends asked questions. Families connected dots. The image they'd curated couldn't survive the weight of truth. Reputation isn't destroyed by exposure. It's destroyed by consistency. And there's told the same story no matter who looked at it. Evelyn and I met one last time at the same cafe where this all began. No tension, no shared grief, just two people who had reclaimed themselves. I don't regret knowing, she said quietly. I regret how long I ignored it. I nodded. Same. We didn't promise friendship. We didn't cling to each other. Some connections exist only to guide you through a storm, not to last beyond it. Walking away felt lighter than staying ever had. Brooke tried one final message weeks later, an apology shaped like nostalgia. She talked about memories, about potential, about what we could have fixed. I didn't reply. Closure doesn't require conversation. It requires decision. The revenge wasn't public humiliation or shouting matches. It wasn't cruelty. It was dignity. It was refusing to beg. It was letting the truth stand where lies once lived and walking forward without carrying the weight of someone else's choices. I didn't win by breaking her. I won by refusing to break myself. And that, I learned, is the only revenge that lasts.